Welcome back to part B of my conversation with Greg Russ. Let's not waste any time and get right back into the podcast. I guess with that period, you say no to Channel 7, but you get these opportunities with the Winter Olympics and things like that. Could you take me inside your thought process in you have like two offers there, or stay with 10, stay with, or go to Channel 7. What drives you towards staying at Channel 10 and going, this is the right place for me? Because I think a lot of people experience this where they could have a job opportunity here or something there. What did you kind of go back to make you feel comfortable in your decision making?
For me, it's not just about the money. It's about the people that you're going to be working with. In my case, there was opportunity for growth, whereas to begin with, it's not to say that I wouldn't have had that with 7, but it wasn't as clear cut as that. It would have been like, come over, do supercars, let's see where it leads, kind of thing. So I think I probably went with my gut in the end. I didn't have anyone managing or representing me at that stage, so I did it on my own. David was incredibly good. You just, even to this day, mate, I have straight up conversations with him, Daniel, about different things, and you always knew where you stood. He was very good and still is at supporting the people he believes in and creating that framework to help you develop. But at the same time, if you didn't do a good enough job, he would tell you too. And I think that's actually a good thing. Sometimes we sugarcoat stuff a bit too much now. You actually need to hear the hard stuff sometimes if you're going to grow properly and have that moment of, righto, I didn't do a good job of that, and the only way to get better is to listen to people like him and what they've got to say and make yourself better from that. And they were really tough moments, mate. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and I learnt from them. I actually have come to the belief in your work life and probably even in your own private life that I think you are judged on not the setbacks but the way you recover from them. So sometimes if you had a setback for whatever reason, in it happened to me once or twice in broadcasting, when that happened, I found that the pit lane or colleagues in broadcasting and so on, I mean, providing it's not a massive faux pas that has you on the front page of the paper or all through social media or something bad, invariably, if you do it right, they're like, oh, wow, look at the way he's doing that. Not what transpired 6 months ago that left you feeling pretty flat, if that makes sense. You're judged on how you deal with it, not with often the setback itself.
Yeah, it's a good point because often people, you see the result of what happened, but it's the process of getting back up,
Correct.
going again, because then that fills you with confidence as well. And people look around you and go, yeah, no, they're getting up and doing their thing. So it's definitely a confidence thing, but it also proves a lot of resolve, and you see all those things come through.
Exactly. I at one point there, I went back to kind of reporting on RPM and then gradually pit lane again at supercars and so on. But I remember doing a couple of stories for RPM where I pulled nearly like a 24-hour shift. And I wanted that story to be beautiful and perfect. And back then it was on tape, so you're trying to find bits of sound and bits of vision that you wanted, and then you had to craft it and write it together. And they're big, long stories because you had the time to do that back then, whereas now everything's so bite-sized.
Hmm.
And I think they saw that I was invested like that I didn't just go, oh, well, throw my hands in the air. They treated me terribly. How woe is me. I didn't do that. I went the other way. And then a few other things that were a little bit fortuitous. But I mean, I was at Sports Tonight on the night of September 11, and the newsroom was all kind of shutting down. And I walked past what's called News Exchange, and News Exchange has all these feeds that come in, Reuters and all these different. So you just got this bank of monitors with vision everywhere. And when I walked past, the operator in there was looking a bit ashen faced, and he said to me, "I reckon I just saw a plane go into the World Trade Center." And I said, "What?" And Sandra Sully was reading the news at that stage, and her producer was very switched on, and he cut to the vision straight away. They took a live feed of it, and Sandra had to talk over it. And as I say, the newsroom is there's almost no one left. There's only a handful of people left. at this time of night. And the phone rang in the Sports Tonight area, and I picked it up, and the producer said to me, just record everything. So between myself and the guy in News Exchange, we started setting up tape everywhere, recording all these different feeds of stuff that was going on. Sandra kept ad-libbing over all of it, and we were there until, I don't know, whatever time it was. And then the newsroom started to come back to life. So all these good people started coming in, and they came to me and they said, "Have you been watching this?" And I said, "Yep, everything. I time coded stuff, so I knew that Daniel spoke about the South Tower at this time, and then like I could find all those things." And they said, "Okay, we're going to do a 6 a.m. bulletin that is all focused on this. Obviously, we're going to get some people on the ground there in the US and blah, blah, blah. Can you write us a 5-minute summary of everything that happened and voice it for us? But will you stay? Like, it's already late. This is going to go until whatever time. Will you do that?" I said, 100%, no problem. And so I wrote it. I didn't quite like the choice of wording I had, but then some really good news people came and said, "Hey, finesse this, use this word, or use less of that, let the sound tell the story," and so on. Very, very good people that I rate to this day. And I've kept that, Daniel. I've kept that thing. And I think no one wants to report on that stuff. I was just a sports guy who happened to be Johnny on the spot, right? It did not become very real for me until I went on a family holiday to the US in 2016, and we went there. So in reality, you're thousands of miles away. But I think people seeing me do some of those things, and I mean, I could very easily have said, "Oh, sorry, mate, my shift's over. See you later. Good luck," kind of thing. And I just didn't think that was the right thing to do. So that investment, and I guess that translates in the motor racing space to passion, because you're not bound by, "I'm off here at 5. See you later," kind of thing. Yeah, they see that stuff, and I think they react to that ethic.
That day, obviously, like I was quite young when that happened. From I guess, a broadcast and a TV point of view, what was the feeling like in that kind of space you talk about? There wasn't many people in there. For you, were you nervous? What was your thought space, and what was everyone else thinking in such a pivotal time in history?
Oh, I thought it was going to be World War III. I rang Greg Murphy. I went to his voicemail. I rang my parents. I rang my girlfriend, now my wife at the time, I think too, and stuff like that. And that was around the work going on at the time. But then what very quickly happens here is it is such a massive news story that you don't have a huge amount of time to dwell. You end up having to go, right, you know, more vision is coming through, more comment is coming through, and then you've got to liaise with the news people about what the bulletin is going to look like. And okay, we've got a reporter doing this, so we need less of that in your story, or we need more of that in your story, and rah, rah, rah. So that sort of almost adrenaline takes over, but you're around good people, you're using things that you've learnt along the way. Not something I really want to do again, but yeah, I did think it was going to be a really bad thing in the wake of it for the world. Yeah.
I think the thing is that the common theme that you've brought there through Channel 10 is that you've had so many different life experiences, whether it be sport or obviously something like 9/11 having, which is such a pivotal moment in history. It's pretty remarkable to think you can get so much experience in one workplace and go, like, look at my resume after that. It's pretty incredible to hear your stories about your time at 10.
I'm indebted to them, really. Some days I go, how did those planets align that I ended up there at that time, in a great, patch or period for them around motor racing, and then to be entrusted by some of the management there to, um, to try other things was very good. There was some difficult moments for the business that I rode through with them, but I mean, basically 14 years with them. And it's not something many young people in their jobs talk about anymore, to have that sort of length of association or employment with someone. And there are still skills from that now. You look back, I mean, I talked about the fact that some of it was tape and whatever else. I mean, now you can just hook your phone up, and the next thing I'm on Sunrise doing a live report via my phone if I needed to. I mean, you couldn't do any of that back then. But a lot of the skills from that still serve you very well now, even in the modern world of bite-sized social media, whatever. Some of the skills from that are still very important.
And we talk about broadcast rights a little bit earlier. They again shift. Channel
Yes.
7 give up their rights or they don't get the rights from 2014 into 2015. And Fox Sports and Channel 10 are now back into it. But you get the call up and you are on the broadcast for 2015 for V8 Supercars and you're one of the headline commentators. Could you talk through how that came about and what your thought process was at the time?
Um, Came about in part through a boss at Channel 10 at the time. There was a bit of a shuffle happening. Matthew White was coming to 10. He's a good friend. Um, they thought an opportunity to be involved in it, but over on the supercar side was going to be good for me and so on. I probably didn't do my homework well enough because it was such a significant period of change. The sport had done a very good deal financially. Not everyone liked the thought of it going behind a paywall because it changed its accessibility. And it was the kind of wholesale change that we were talking about before. So you're taking some elements and modifying it. And I probably should have stopped and asked, am I better served in a different position to where I first ended up? And I didn't really do that, and I probably should have. There's no regrets in that. I mean, still the opportunity to work alongside Neil Crompton and all of those guys is massive. But what you have to do, I think, Daniel, in those moments, safeguard a few things. If a young broadcaster was getting the chance to work on cricket now or something along those lines, and they're a bit of a fresh face, you should try, I think, and ensure that you got, a good 2 years to get your feet under the desk, right? Because we're in this instantaneous world where we're like, oh, it's working or it's not working, it needs to, da, 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 da. But the reality is the audience has to get to know you in that role. Now, it's not to say they didn't know me. They've got to get to know you in that role, and you've got to get a level of comfortability and a bit like a set of gloves, right? That they're used to it. They get used to it. Now, what I think if I'd relaxed into the call a little bit more instead of thinking about the daunting. I mean, this is the premier touring car class in this part of the world. It is an intense environment, mate. It can be political at times, quite political, actually. I mean, great opportunity, and it's not one that I have no regrets. Don't get me wrong, there are no regrets on that. But I think there are elements that I should have done better in when I look back on it. And then when I ended up back in the pit lane, I felt like a natural home again. I felt, it's not to say that I don't like the lead calling, I do. And then as I've aged more now, I'm doing more freelance stuff now. I'm doing some GT stuff with Channel 7 and things like that. I get to work with the next wave of broadcasters, the young guys that have come through, the Richard Crailes, the Chad Nailons, the Matt Noltes, and so on. And they're world class, mate. They're unbelievably good at what they do. And I'm a huge believer that in the moments where I get to work with them, that just because I might have whatever 10, 15 years more experience, whatever, nothing. I want them to lead. I want to complement them and be a part of their journey. I want to see them thrive, right? I don't come at it from the point of, oh well, I should be the main guy here and you can just do the sideline. I don't. That's not how I function.
Yeah.
So it's yeah. I mean, how do I frame that period? Amazing to think that I got to call a Bathurst 1000 again. I did that in 2000 as well. Sometimes you got to look at strengths, and I think the pit lane is a natural home for me. And if I ever went back to supercars, I mean, you never say never in this game. It's not something that's on my radar at all. But I mean, if you ever did, I think I'd go back in a different kind of capacity. Um, yeah, yeah. So it was a great thing. Crompo and I have the most immense respect for Neil Crompton. He's a bloody national treasure, and to get to sit in a commentary box with him and to witness how he goes about it, and to work with him, very special part of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about being a lead commentator there. I remember 2015 Bathurst 1000. So Lowndes won that race. The race goes on for quite long. For people that don't know, the Bathurst 1000 can be anywhere between 6 hours, could be 7 hours 45 if you look at a 2014 Bathurst. More of a curious question. How do you go, say, having food or going to the bathroom during those long calls? What does that kind of look like behind the scenes of a lead caller?
So often now, Aaron Noonan or Chad Nailon or someone like that, over time they've all done it. Will fill in some of the ad break stuff. So um, that gives you the chance to do that, a bathroom break or to quickly eat something or whatever it might be. You're still invariably wide into what's going on because you don't want to miss anything. Back in the day at Channel 10, Matty White might have stepped out and Billy Woods might have stepped in, for example, or something along those lines. A little bit of a handover in the when I was in the pit lane. I can remember running into the ladies one time at Bathurst, and then doing horribly realizing how I was in such a hurry to I realized I'm in the wrong place, and I quickly did a U-turn and got out of there. Um, but so yeah, it's a long day. You jam a little bit of food and things like that in where you can. But it's a longer day for the men and women. I mean, to do a Bathurst, to give you an idea, that broadcast is anywhere between 250 and 300 people to make it all come together. And some of them are up there weeks beforehand, and they're doing very, very tough, very laborious jobs. I mean, a lot of responsibility for you in the front line because you're representing these people, and they'll be there late at night, taking things down on Sunday night long after you're gone. So you need to do a good job for those people who are as much a part of the broadcast and who are as vitally important to it as you are. So yeah, 300 people. Most don't realise that. I think it's 250 now or thereabouts, but it's a really significant number of people to bring a world class broadcast of that stature to life.
And it's such a team effort as well. Like you look at it, like 250 people. It's not like it's a cricket ground. It's not like it's a football ground. It's a 6.2K track with
Exactly.
undulating areas. You got camera crews there. It's a whole team effort. And you often see the Bathurst 1000 broadcasts often nominated for awards. And I think that goes to show like the quality of the broadcast, but the continued just trajectory that it continues to take, even still to this day.
And people don't realise Neil Crompton will go up there with Nathan Prendergast, who's the head of television there, and they'll do a site survey a couple of months beforehand. Where can we lower this camera and try and capture a bit of the speed or the inclination more? Can we do like they're constantly changing it up? What stories do we need to revisit? What stories haven't we told? How can we, get this emotive opening to what is the AFL Grand Final, the National Rugby League Grand Final of motor racing, the equivalent thereof in our country. Yes, not a grand final in the sense of that, but that stature, that absolute stature. And so, yeah, there's that constant creative questioning. Jess Yates has come up with some very clever things along the way too. I mean, she's brilliant. I think she went to them with the idea of Thomas Randall playing the piano and doing the F1 opening music for a special opener they were going to create for the Grand Prix coverage, not this year, but last year. And Formula One loved it. I mean, it's got some crazy amount of shares and what have you. And I think that was largely her insistence or her doing that it came about.
It's incredible. I think the people in and around the broadcast are often underappreciated. And it's not until you see these big moments or you're there as a fan. It's just trying to give the viewer this real world experience and make them feel like they're a part of that day. It's an incredible feeling if you really tick it off.
Exactly. And to try and give them a bit of backstage access. I mean, that's the thing we all want now. I mean, Drive to Survive, whether you like it or you don't. The fact that we've unmasked the athlete a little bit, taken people behind the scenes, shown them a few things that are going on and so on. Um, and I think even a bit of interest around what happens in the commentary box. I mean, you to see the volume of information and statistics and things at their fingertips, the inputs of information, where it's coming from, the people behind the scenes that are dancing around each other to tell the story, right? So you've got a pit producer saying, "Hey, I've got Daniel Morris, and he's got Chaz Mostert with this comment, but on track we're watching this battle. When do we get Daniel into the interview?" Da-da-da-da. I mean, it is a huge juggle. And my mate Nathan, who I mentioned there before, I mean, he's more head of television now, but he was the director of it for a long time. Brian Forshaw is in the director's chair now. Very, very good sports director. But I mean, there was a time there where they had two trucks OB trucks, one at the bottom of the mountain, one at the top of the mountain, and you'd kind of hand over between them. I think they got to a point there where Nathan was directing both. So he directed the whole thing, and he had this knack of when Fabian Coulthard came down the hill that year and rolled at the chase. I think he cut to maybe a track camera, a low down track camera on the entry to the chase, and in like a fleeting moment, he saw the attitude of Fabian's car, and he quickly cut. He cut. I can't remember whether he cut to the onboard or the external of it. He knew exactly how to cover it. I mean, he's just got this innate ability to digest all of those inputs and then tell the story for the fan.
And talking about telling a story, I actually wanted to talk to you about a piece of work you did that you won an award for. It was Story of the Year for radio and television, but it was your interview with Marcus Ambrose when he stepped out of the car in 2015, I believe, for DJR Team Penske.
Yep.
No doubt it was a very vulnerable time for Marcus, who had been at the top of motor racing, been in the US, been in NASCAR, has come back and felt like, in his words, it didn't really work for him. What was that interview experience, but also that environment like? Because you're talking to a driver at a very vulnerable time where they've got the helmet on most of the time and they're trying to do the best they can. What was that whole experience like?
He invited us around to his place in Tasmania. We sat out the back, and I was acutely aware of what you just said about the sensitive moment. I get on very well with him. I think he's a racer's racer. He doesn't like all the other fluff and BS. And so I just kind of tried to come at it in a conversational sense. I had some notes about things that I wanted to ask, but I tried to take the podcast approach and react to things that he said and delve a little bit where I felt it needed to, and so on. I'm very proud of that story. And then it's ironically been replicated a little bit. They asked him to come to the Motorsport Australia Awards. I think it may be a year later. I can't recall the timings now. And he and I did a Q&A on stage for 15 minutes or so. I have the utmost respect for him. He's helped Owen Kelly with his Trans Am when Owen was racing it, and so on. So I've had a bit of behind the scenes time with him as well. So it's nice to see him back, mate, at the racetrack with his daughter. I can't remember if Adelaide's doing it as well now, but certainly Tabitha is back around motor racing and so on.
This is, I guess, more of a fan moment from my side, but it was a really interesting time for supercars. I want to take you back to 2016, Bathurst 1000, but also leading into the Gold Coast
Gold Coast.
600.
Yep.
So there was a famous, for anyone that doesn't know, in the 2016 Bathurst 1000, there was a big crash with Jamie Whincup, Garth Tander, and Scott McLaughlin with about 10 or 11 laps to go. Then a couple of weeks later, there was an even bigger crash with Fabian Coulthard and Garth Tander. And there was a piece on Inside Supercars that, as a fan, it really stood out to me. But it was you delivering a piece to camera and just calling out, very much on social media, there can be a lot of hate and a lot of just disturbing things that are said to athletes. What was that like for you, and what was that period like in the pit lane? Because I'm sure there was a lot of tension and lots of other things in around that period.
I can recall the moment I did it on air. We were in the studios at Fox in Sydney, and at St Leonard's there, or near Artarmon. And I wrote a couple of dot points on the rundown of just stuff that was in my mind that I felt passionate about. And anyway, I didn't specifically think of word for word what I wanted to say, or where I think it would go per se. I knew there was a rough moment where stuff was going to come up in conversation, and I think we are going to an ad break, and I semi-freewheeled. It wasn't fully, but I semi-freewheeled with it, and came from the heart, I guess, and came from a place that I'm not perfect. I am not some sort of social media guru, or, I just felt that it's a sport that has color bloodlines or whatever. Like you love Holden, you love Ford, or you love a particular driver, and I get that. I've got no problem with that at all. I'm not asking people to change that, but I was asking them to stop and think about the knock-on effect of how far they took it. There are families here. I mean, in years' time, Fabian's kids are growing up, and I don't want them reading that stuff. It doesn't matter whose side you're on or who was right or wrong. You and I could sit here now and absolutely articulate what we felt if we had different viewpoints about a particular high point motor racing incident. And there's no problem with you having your view and me having mine and agreeing to disagree. I've got no drama with that at all. And you can still do that with a level of passion, intensity, whatever you want. You can stick to your guns. So you stick by your driver. Doesn't matter. I've got no problem with that at all. But when it gets personal, that's wrong. And some of the shit that is out there where people level things at each other as fans or I mean, it's just as bad, really, if they're leveling it at drivers and team people and whatever. And the big thing for me here, Daniel, is if they don't wake up to themselves, at some point, these people will just turn all that stuff off or contribute the minimum. And that's the worst thing, that you have all these beautiful access points now to see what people are doing. Um, don't behave in a manner that I think in 99% of the cases they wouldn't do, and I know they don't do when they meet you face to face. In the handful, maybe let's call it two occasions where I've met some of these people, they're very different to how they behave on social media. Very, very different. Very, hi, nice to meet you, and so on. That's great. That's great. I'm pleased that. But why then flip a switch and say stuff online that is clearly not the same person I've just met?
Yeah, it's a good point because social media is a great access tool, especially from an athlete's point of view. For fans to be able to understand what an athlete's doing is, it's really special because they're allowing access into your lives and they're granting that for you. But also just to give a different perspective, I think it's a really interesting thing in sport right now because unfortunately it's still going on. Like there's still
Correct.
unfortunately
Correct.
trolls that are in
Yep.
and around. It's I really hope like very soon, it's something that people can wake up to and just go, we don't need to do it. Just watch sport for what's like sport
Sports
is.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Peter Adderton actually does make some very good points on this stuff on a little bit on the flip side of what I'm talking about. He doesn't want hate, but he
Mm.
doesn't want them to be vanilla and robotic
No.
either. No one wants that either. So I mean, that's the other risk here is that you'll end up with the players going, okay, I'll just say standard stuff and I won't speak my mind. Um, that's not why people watch sport. They watch sport because they want to hear what the athletes really like. If Max Verstappen is upset about something that happened in Spain, whichever way it goes, you actually want that. You want that. And respect the bloke. If you mightn't like him, you mightn't like his approach to motor racing. On the flip side, you might go, well, you know what? It's motor racing, and it is hard to win in Formula One, and you've got to be a bit brutal sometimes. I respect that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Rusty, I've got a couple other photos to show you.
This
This,
concerns me. Go, yes.
I think you might not like this one as much, but I'm going to show you.
Uh-huh.
Do you
Oh, good
remember
God. Yes, I do.
this
I would
one?
say this is Sandown. This is Sandown. So Murph on the left, Rihanna in the middle, me on the right. And let me tell you, I loved those get-ups. All right.
Oh,
So
great.
they were great. And that whole notion of retro round there was a very, very cool thing. And I took it to the next level. So I have I got to interview once. I got to interview John C. Riley and Will Ferrell for Anchorman.
Wow.
That's one of the highlights of my life because I love that style of humor, always have done, and I love Will Ferrell. And it was they were going. We were in Sydney at this hotel, and they block booked, I think, about 6 rooms, and they just went room to room to room to the next interview, right? So like we're in one, Today Show's in another, Sunrise, and so on, and so you got 10 minutes. And at the end of the 10 minutes, the publicity lady comes in and goes, she's sort of tapping the watch like, "Hey, enough, time's up." And Will Ferrell looked at her and he goes, "Hey, these guys are good. We're gonna have a photo with them. That we, like don't rush them, kind of thing." And I was real. My cameraman I was with that day, I've worked with for years, Benny Green, and he was chuffed because he wanted to get a photo of the moment, and she wanted to move them along.
And
Retro round.
it's
So
oh god.
at one of those events, I had that outfit that you saw there. I had that outfit there for the coverage, But in and around it, I did some fun stuff on Inside Supercars and socials where I had the full Ron Burgundy kit. I had a suit. I think it was like a purple suit and a tie and the full moustache and I had a lot of fun with doing that stuff. Crazy, crazy photos. And it costs a bit of money for them to do the retro liveries and all the outfits and all that sort of stuff. But that was a great decision for the Sandown round for sure.
You mentioned there, like talking to Will Ferrell, and you've had great opportunity to talk to a whole breadth of people, whether it be Will, whether it be now as we know him, Sir Lewis Hamilton,
Yep.
Daniel Ricciardo, and everyone in between. When you get the opportunity to speak to these athletes or to these people, how do you go into those interviews and try and get the best, not only out of yourself so you can deliver the best product, but also make them feel as comfortable as possible? Because no doubt, like you said, they're bouncing around from interview to interview. It can be a little bit, no, I don't want to say platonic, but it can be very similar throughout.
Yep.
How
Yep.
do you get the best out of those moments and extract those nuggets?
Or use all of your assets. So, pardon me. So, there's a level of preparation where you want to ask about X, Y, and Z because that's topical right now. The other asset is time. How much time have I got? Have I got 15 minutes? Have I got 5 minutes? Have I got half an hour? What have you got? Then your research can go to certain levels. So, is this story purely for the Formula One broadcast, and we just need to know about the now? Do we need to know about how qualifying went, something out of the last round, and whatever? Or is it a bit more in depth? How's the move to Ferrari been in Lewis's case? What's working, what's not working there? What do you got to sharpen up, and so on? You might get some back information from other people. Sometimes the teams in Formula One are a bit protective too. Sometimes they want to know what you're talking about and what have you. Um, I would also read the person. So to your point, right? At the Grand Prix this year, I was in the Shell suite. Charles Leclerc arrived. They were meant to arrive together. Charles was meant to arrive with Lewis, but they arrived about 5 minutes apart. And their timings for different things were slightly out. I think Lewis had been at another thing and had run slightly over and whatever. But then Charles had to get to the next thing. So instead of it being, hi, welcome everybody, here they come, and the two of them on stage for whatever it was, 15 minutes, I had to start with Charles, bring in Lewis, let Charles go, and finish with Lewis. And that was all a bit fluid. So you're trying, okay, so is Charles okay, or is he a bit tight on time? And Lewis is going to arrive late. How do we ensure that we're halfway through with Charles, but we rightly acknowledge him and so on? So you just read the situation. Lewis was awesome that day. He was talking about being nervous about some of our animals, like alligators, crocodiles, and snakes and stuff like that, and how much he loved Australia, and then it reunited him with Will Davison. So Will Davison was there from the Supercars team, and they had been teammates in the UK together in the junior formula, so they got to see each other again. So we soaked up that moment, right? So it you've got to use all your skills. Listen to the answers. Sometimes Lewis would say something, and that prompted me to ask another question, or to, if I felt it was wrapped up enough, to move on. In the longer form stuff with the podcasts, I'll go to a level of depth where some of it is life and time, where you're recounting certain things that you know or you might like to know a bit more about. Sometimes you might call on people that know them well enough that might help you with some backstories that can perhaps, if they're comfortable, get them to open up on a particular subject. And then there are times, mate, where something literally comes out of the blue at you that you did not expect. So in Casey Stoner's case, I sat down with him for, I don't know how long it was now, 90 minutes or something or other. And we're about halfway through, and he comes forth with the fact that he's been battling with chronic fatigue and it's been really tough for him. And that whole thing from the podcast went worldwide. I had people messaging me going, hey, mate, this is in a Dutch motorsport website. Here you go, and all this sort of stuff, right? So if I didn't listen to what he was saying, gauge he's sharing something that is a bit raw, a bit fresh. I don't know how far he wants to go with that, And you've got to then think about what that means for the audience too. Does that mean you'll never ride a bike again or something? Like what is, you know what I mean? Like you got to think on the fly. So I love that stuff. Over time, you asked me at the beginning, my level of comfortability, if that's the right word, when I was at school around public speaking, and now where I am in life, um, being far more comfortable in that domain. So I had questions in the Lewis and Charles example that I gave you before, only a handful because we only had a small window. By and large, they went out the window. You know, they had one or two that I used. The rest of it was shooting the breeze with them, and I love that stuff. And providing they can see that you respect them and you try and form a level of rapport, and you do that in your mannerisms and how you come across and all of that sort of stuff. Generally, they light up. I mean, most motor racing people I've come across over time are acutely aware of where they have come from and how valuable our fans are to the sport. So in that domain, in a room, a corporate suite with hundreds of people, a couple hundred people, whatever it was, and not television, they're a bit more open and giving and relaxed and fun and so on. So roll with that, go with that.
You said we're coming to the end of this podcast. I really love Rusty's Garage. I mean, being a
Thank you.
motorsport fan, I really enjoy it. But you touched on there, like you get these great snippets, like with Casey Stoner talking about his chronic fatigue. You've been doing it now for 7 years. Like that's a pretty incredible milestone to achieve. And I just want to mention here you've received some awards for it. And I'm just going to list
Thank
them
you.
out. Best Radio Podcast in 2019, Journalist of the Year 2018, and Best Radio Podcast winner in 2018. To receive these accolades and be able to talk to people in motorsport in and around it, how does it feel to have a product of your own and feel like you can get these such knowledgeable answers and talk to such incredible people in that space?
I'm very grateful. It is because of the people that have been good enough to come on and share, and because of the people that listen. I don't do it for the awards. I'm absolutely chuffed and very proud of the awards, it's something that has had a bit of success on both sides of the ditch. The Kiwi guests that I've had on, there's been a couple of awards that have come from that too. Um, I sit back now and think, who do we need to get back on? Because it's like I've just had Toby Price back on, and the last time I had him on was 2018. Well, he's won another Dakar since then. He's won a Baja 500. I mean, there's all these things. He had a truck burned down to the ground on him, and then had come back from that. And so, and then there's people I haven't got to yet that I would like to get to. And there's the technology that came out of COVID around things like Riverside and other programs that enable us to be thousands of Ks away and still talk to someone is very good. I think face to face is still, it has a slight edge to it because you're there with the person, and you can work with the environment and them, and there is a little bit of a gap when it's over the net, but it's still, I mean, it's still absolutely workable. I think when I set out on that journey, I was at the end of a contractual period with Supercars. They had approached me in the I don't know, 6 months before that ended, and we started whiteboarding it. What would it look like? What would we call it? How would it work? And so on. And it's been very true to that. We've morphed a few things and done some newsy based stuff, and I'm sitting at the moment thinking about what else do I want to do with it, But it's more also about who I haven't got to yet that I would like to get on if I can. I'm massively proud of it. It's one of the favorite things that I do, Daniel. I just love that sort of conversation. We're in a game where people generally are masked. They're in helmets. We focus on the contest. This takes it away from the contest a little bit, and we get to see a bit more of the personality that I talked about before. And I thrive in that space. That's one of the things I genuinely love.
I really enjoy, so my favorite driver is Scott McLaughlin,
Cool.
and anytime like you interview him, or I think it was
I've got to get him back on. I've got to get him back on.
well, that's the thing. I remember it was, I think it was on Inside Supercars, and you did a part A, part B with him, and it was
Yep.
just when he transitioned from Gary Rogers into DJR Team Penske. two very different environments. Like Gary is very out there, enjoys a good time, but DGR is very, very corporate and
Yep.
very particular about how they go about things. And I think the way you're able to make those drivers feel really comfortable is just, it's such an art. And I just really enjoy listening to it.
Thank you, mate. The Ambrose one you mentioned before was a bit of a catalyst for those conversations, and we realised that it had been so good. Why not do a few more of those? And I think we did one with Lowndes, with Michael Caruso, Davey Reynolds might be in there. I can't remember. And that it was actually, now that you bring it up, the genesis for Rusty's Garage in many respects. I realised I enjoyed that. I could put it on a different platform and expand it instead of it just being a 10 or 15-minute conversation, whatever it was for television. We could run them more long form. And you know, to get a driver or a rider, they're very busy people. To get them to give up 60 to 90 minutes of their time is enormously hard, and it's not easy done. Like there's a speedway racer in New Zealand, a champion speedway racer who has been and was for a long time the caddy for Tiger Woods, Steve Williams, right? Like champion sports person, very, very good caddy, worked um, with, Masters winners, and he's just released a new book. So I think he did 20 odd podcasts around the promotion of that book. So I could understand like that kind of stuff must wear people out too. So if someone says to me, hey mate, not right now, or a podcast isn't for me, I never have a problem with that. That's no problem at all. If you want to come back on in a year's time, in 6 months' time, great. They're timeless, and I can appreciate that it's very hard to get that sort of length of time out of somebody to, and you got to be in the right frame of mind for that too. You got to know that you're going to sit down and talk about a few things. Some of it might be heart wrenching. I mean, I've just done one which comes out next Tuesday with Dean Herridge, who's been a rally driver that's competed for Possum Born, has been successful in Asia and you name it. And he's commentating with me these days. Very good commentator. And he was one of the first people on the scene of Peter Brock's crash. He was driving for Possum Born Motorsport when Possum died. So you're having conversations around stuff that it's deep. There's some of that stuff's deep. So when they come on, I think there's an element of them, probably realizing there'll be some stuff we cover, and will they be open to that? And then there's me sitting there going, will they be open to that? I have to read that room and go with or move on from it accordingly.
I've really enjoyed this conversation, and
Cool.
I'd love to get from you. You've had a
Yep.
lot of different life experiences, like you touched on. You've been in the newsroom when 9/11 happened. You've interviewed athletes at their most vulnerable time, but also their most willing time when they've won a race. What is a piece of advice that you have either received or that has stuck with you that I guess that has helped you along the way?
There's probably a couple of them. I worked with a swimmer who has medalled at Commonwealth Games and represented Australia in the Olympic Games and so on. She's got a great line about simply be you. Now, in journalism or broadcasting, the moment I did that, I unlocked something, and you have a little bit of polish around the edges because it's television or radio or podcasting or whatever. But the more you can peel it back and be you and whatever, a bit vulnerable, have a laugh, whatever, that's for whatever reason, people don't know you from a bar of soap, but the audience, when they see that, hear that, for some reason, it clicks. So they can see through that. They can see through that. We use authenticity too much now, but they can see through that. So that's probably point number one. Point number two is what we talked about before. There are going to be setbacks, whether you are an athlete, whether you are a broadcaster. There are going to be some setbacks along the way. Someone may not like you. I mean, it can be our game a very subjective game. Management might change and they go, oh, I don't like the look of that Greg Rust. Well, okay, it doesn't matter what credentials you bring, or I haven't won a gazillion Bathursts or championship titles. I'm a broadcaster, right? Don't let that setback define you, right? How you emerge from that and how you deal and cope with that setback is invariably what people will remember you and mark you on, or so don't get fixated on that. Don't throw the toys out of the pram. Don't be professional. Okay, this is a setback. Thank you for the opportunity I've had. Move on and so on, as heartbreaking as that is, and then work hard to create the next one. I'm very proud as you and I wrap this up here, and I've covered a lot in whatever it is, 25 plus years of broadcasting. I'm grateful now that I am still playing in other spaces, using some of those skills from before around whatever it is, social media, whatever. I can't edit like my daughters can or whatever, but I'm enjoying using the skills from what I've learned and applying it in new spaces and working with the younger ones that are coming through that. It's very, very important that in the same way that I've been fortunate to have these opportunities and maybe made the most of those opportunities along the way, that I also help the next wave coming through. And I'm very, very determined to do that. So when young people like yourself kind of reach out and want to have a conversation, I generally say yes, right? And that's certainly true of the young ones I work with in broadcasting. The ones that are, the real genuine operators and they're working hard, they should get that opportunity, mate. I was given an opportunity, they should get theirs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Rusty, I've really enjoyed this conversation. One final question for you.
Go.
We throw to the guest and we ask them who you'd like to challenge to next come onto the podcast. So I'll ask you,
Ooh. Ooh.
who do you think would be good to come onto the Sports Playbook?
Oh, you've totally thrown me there. And it can be anything. It could be athlete or broadcaster or anything. It could be in anyone, can it?
Can be anyone. Sports could be broadcaster, anyone that you think of.
That's tough because there are lots of good stories out there. See if you can track down my buddy Lee Diffie. There you
Yeah,
go. See if
there
you
we
can
go.
track him down. So he's with NBC in the United States now and doing some unreal things. He's the team that he was working with on the Paris Olympic Games last year have just won an Emmy Award. So my mate, who was a part of some Logie wins with us at Channel 10 back in the Bathurst era, I'm very lucky to all of us to have played a little part in that. He now has, with the team that he works with on the Olympics there, an Emmy. That is crazy, crazy to think about. We don't do it for those sort of awards, but to think that a guy from, Queensland, from Carroll Park on the outskirts of Brisbane there, has gone on to do that is a great Aussie success story, and it's one that I think more light should be shone on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Rusty. I'll try to track Lee down
Good
somehow,
luck.
some way.
It's been great to chat with you, mate. Thank you very much for getting me on, Daniel, and good luck with it all.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Inside the Playbook. A huge thank you to Greg Russ for his time, insight, and generosity. Until next time, we will catch you on the next play.